5 potential trade candidates for the Buccaneers, and it's a mock draft Monday. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this Mock Draft Monday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at @JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Talking NFL draft today as we start our mock draft Mondays, but wanted to kick things off by going back into the mailbag where we had a question come in from Mike, who asks, who, in your opinion, are good and realistic trade options? And it can be both ways. So this is a great question from Insider Mike. And of course, it can be both ways means that Mike is saying players that the Bucs could trade for, as well as the players the Bucs could trade away. So let's start with the players that the Bucs could trade away, because I have two that make a lot of sense. One of them is, of course, Jamel Dean. Now, I think one way or another, Dean isn't going to be with the Bucs next season. And while teams could very well know that and just wait for the Bucs to release him as a post-June 1st cut and free up that $13 million in cap space, someone might be willing to part with a day 3 pick in order to secure him and not have to get into a bidding war on the open market for his service. If the Bucs trade him prior to June 1st, it would free up a little over $8 million in cap space while leaving the Bucs with just under $7 million in dead cap. However, if they trade him after June 1st, that frees up $12.8 million in cap space and leaves the Bucs with just $2.2 million in dead cap. So the numbers are the same regardless of if it's a trade or a cut based on it being before or after June 1st. Now, maybe that's a situation where the Bucs can hold on to him and to try to flip him to a team that missed out on a corner that they wanted in the draft. Then they can trade Dean for a late round pick in 2026. But I think that Dean is certainly going to be a guy that the Bucs could trade away in a package for another player, or just trade for a pick, considering they probably want to get out from under that contract and move on from Dean, who has not lived up to the deal that he signed back in 2023. The other tradeaway candidate for me is still Rachaad White. Now, if he's traded before or after June 1st, he leaves just $227,000 in dead cap while freeing up $3.325 million in cap space. This contract, it doesn't matter whether he's moved before or after June 1st. Doesn't matter if it's a trade or a cut. It all stays the same because he's still on his rookie contract. But here's why I think that Rachaad could realistically be traded. Rachaad essentially lost his job last season. Bucky Irving was absolutely incredible, and he took over that lead back role. Now, Rachaad is still much better in pass protection, but it reached a point last year where when it came to running the ball, Bucky was the better and more explosive back. When it came to catching the ball, Bucky was the more explosive and impressive back with the ball in his hands. Now, Rachaad is going to be playing second fiddle in this offense while he's entering a contract year. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Rachaad doesn't care if he loses that much of a workload and misses out on money in free agency, that he's all about team success and he's completely fine no matter what. My guess would be entering a contract year, he wants to go somewhere that he can be the feature back and improve on his open market value in 2026. Teams like the Raiders, the Titans, the Cowboys, the Broncos, Patriots, Vikings, they could all benefit from adding Rachaad White to the mix and getting some help in their very thin backfields. In the case of the Raiders, the Titans, and the Broncos, you could see Rachaad as the clear number one, whereas the other teams would use him as part of a committee, but likely a better path and a more clear path to the top running back than he would have in the situation that he's in Tampa. Now, I don't think Rachaad is a guy that the Bucs are looking to unload. They're not going out of their way to move him. They're not actively shopping him. They like him. They know that Rachaad can help the team and they would want him back in the fold. But this is going to be one of those moves that is based on situation and circumstance. For starters, Rachaad is going to want out and go to a place, is Rachaad going to want out and go to a place with more opportunity to maximize his open market value? Second, what are the Bucs going to get in return? Are teams going to call about Rachaad and offer a 5th-round pick and that's it? Or is this going to be one of those situations where Rachaad is the sweetener in a deal that the Bucs are trying to get done to bring in someone on the defensive side to ramp up their very questionable defense from last season? When you look at the teams that I listed, you can find talent of positions of need for the Bucs. Obviously, Max Crosby with the Raiders, though I'm far less confident that he's going to get moved after the hiring of Pete Carroll and all the things that they've started to do. The Broncos, you can look to Alex Singleton or Riley Moss, maybe one of the edge rushers. In Dallas, you might look to Deron Bland, who's entering a contract year, and the Cowboys may have to move on from him because of all of the money that they're shelling out everywhere. You're not going to get Micah Parsons in return, so don't even bother asking about that or commenting about it. It's not happening. But you could get a real good corner that the Cowboys know they can't afford moving forward because they paid Dak. They pay Micah Parsons. They're paying all of these other players exorbitant contracts. And, Bland could be the one kind of left, out in the wind. So Tennessee, they might be looking to really blow everything up and get more picks this year since they're basically starting from scratch. So you might try to snag L'Jarius Sneed or Chidobe Awuzie to improve your cornerback situation. You have L'Jarius Sneed. He's entering year 2 of a 4-year, $76.5 million deal. The Bucs would have to rework that a little bit, but that would immediately improve your secondary by leaps and bounds. Meanwhile, Tennessee's going to get back picks and a running back that they sorely need because Tony Pollard has not lived up to what the Titans thought that they were getting when they brought him in. But you get the point that I'm trying to make. I think Rachaad is going to be available in the right deal. Not that the Bucs are going to move him just to move him, but if it'll help fill the void of one of those glaring defensive needs at corner, at edge rusher, at linebacker, and then you can draft another running back this year to complement Bucky and Sean Tucker, he's the most likely player to me on the offensive side of the ball that could get moved. But who are some realistic options that the Bucs could trade for? That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks it. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. Here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to those qualified candidates. It's no wonder that 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. The new Locked On NFL is here, and it's 2 shows every day. You got the madman Tyler Rowland kicking off your morning, and then you can stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. So make it your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, I gave you 2 Buccaneers that could realistically be traded away, but who are some of the players that the Bucs could realistically trade for? I mentioned just a moment ago that I think the dream of trading for Max Crosby is probably dead. He seemed a bit disgruntled about the way things were going in Vegas, but that attitude has now shifted with the addition of Pete Carroll as head coach. They just brought in Chip Kelly as offensive coordinator, so he is not on my list. I am going to start this one with Trey Hendrickson of the Cincinnati Bengals. Look, the Bengals defense is awful. We're talking all-time awful. And if they can stockpile some picks to address being able to rebuild that defense, they're going to do it. Not to mention, they have to up their offer to a very disappointed Jamar Chase, who wanted his money last year, didn't get it, and then just got the NFL Triple Crown. So his price has skyrocketed over what it was less than a year ago. Trey Hendrickson, he's entering the final year of his deal, and he's getting $18.6 million. He's 30 years old, so it's not like he's going to be around for another decade. But the Bengals would have to pay him in addition to paying Chase, Sheldon Rankins, Sam Hubbard, Geno Stone, Jermaine Pratt, Ted Karras, and Cam Taylor-Britt, as well as a few others, all within the next year, or they're going to hit free agency in 2026. Chase is going to break the bank. So you're going to face a decision where you either keep Hendrickson or Hubbard. You're not going to be able to keep both if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. You're likely going to trade away the one that can get you the largest return if you're set on rebuilding the defense. You just got defensive coordinator Al Golden from Notre Dame. He is going to want to make some moves and improve this defense. And I didn't even mention the fact that in 2027, they're going to have to pay their left tackle, Orlando Brown, as well as Daxton Hill, Drew Sample, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle, and Chase Brown, among others, or they're going to hit free agency. So the Bengals are looking at a very small window where they are going to see a lot of their key players hit free agency and not return. If you're going to rebuild an entire side of that of that team, you're going to have draft picks to do it. If you're trading for Hendrickson, you're going to pay a steep price. There's no doubt. I don't think this is a deal where you're giving up a first rounder, but then you're definitely losing a day 2 pick plus even more. You might be looking at 2 day 2 picks. You know, you're one in 2025, one in 2026, but you are going to pay a steep price. With that said, this is a guy that can come in and change your defense the minute he walks in the door. Hendrickson and Diaby coming off the edges, plus you have Servassier Dennis back. You'll have Chris Braswell with a full year, plus another offseason under his belt as part of that rotation. This is a swing for the fences kind of move that Light has made in the past, though not very often, at least not with trades. You could say Brady was swinging for the fences, but that was a free agency move. This would have more of a JPP feel to it, and that trade kind of came out of nowhere. More on that trade coming up in just a minute. The next guy that I think the Bucs could make a move for that they could realistically land is Tariq Woolen, the cornerback from the Seattle Seahawks. This is another expiring contract. You see a pattern here? And a guy that'll basically cost you the same amount per year that Jamel Dean did. Now, the Seahawks are in bad shape with the salary cap. I don't think they would be willing to move on from Devin Witherspoon because, number one, he's absolutely phenomenal. He's an all-pro corner. But number two, trading him does not help their cap situation. You know, it just racks up dead cap, and it would cost them more to trade him this year than it would to keep him when it comes to the salary cap number. With Woolen, you have a certified starting corner, and Seattle can save just over $5 million in cap space this season to go towards the estimated $27.5 million that they're over in cap space. This would be somewhat tricky to pull off, as most trades are, but you're probably looking at a mid-round pick at the very least that the Bucs, but the Bucs are going to want to make sure that they can get a deal done with him before pulling the trigger. Again, you're entering a contract year, so the Bucs are going to want to seek permission to discuss an extension with his agents before a deal is made. Now, that might also increase compensation for Seattle in the deal, which is why they would be willing to do it. If the Bucs know that they can get a locked up starting corner for the next 4 or 5 years, they're more willing to give up draft picks in exchange. It's that whole bird in the hand is worth two in the bush kind of thing. If they're trading for him without discussing an extension, you're probably only going to see one draft pick sent back in return. Now, again, it helps Seattle's cap situation. And with their cap situation, it's going to be really hard for them to re-sign Tariq Woolen after this rookie deal expires. But again, working out a deal ahead of time, now all of a sudden you're in a situation where you might be willing to give up a couple of mid-round picks, maybe one this year, maybe one next year, but you're going to send a little more compensation because you know that you have him locked up and it's more worth it to give up the pick in the future because you already have your guy. Woolen allowed just 55% of targets in his direction to be completed last season, and he finished with 3 interceptions and 14 pass breakups. This would make the draft process much, much easier for the Bucs if they didn't have to find another lockdown corner in the draft that would have to take time to acclimate to the NFL game, and instead they could sacrifice a mid-round pick or two to just lock up Tariq Woolen. And then finally, I'm sure this is the one that you are all waiting on, but I'm going to talk about Myles Garrett. This would be by far the most difficult trade to pull off. But Monday morning, Myles Garrett officially requested his trade from the Cleveland Browns. He talked in his statement about how much he loves the city of Cleveland, but that his goal wasn't to go from Cleveland to Canton. It was to win a championship. The Bucs would certainly be in play for a few reasons if the Browns really do move on from him. Number one, they're in the NFC. That means the Browns won't have to face him except for every 4 years unless they were to meet in the Super Bowl. I don't think the Browns are getting to the Super Bowl anytime soon. That's going to be a big one for Cleveland. They do not want to trade him to a team within the AFC. Second, it's going to cost a ton. When Khalil Mack was traded from the Raiders to the Bears, it cost 2 firsts, a third, and a sixth in exchange for Khalil Mack, a second, and a conditional fifth. Now, Khalil Mack was 27 when that trade went down. Garrett is now 29. But Garrett is a freak of nature. Over the last 2 years, he is second in the NFL in pass rush win rate while being double-teamed on 30% of snaps. He's first in incompletions and interceptions created through pressure, and he's first in the league in forced fumbles. Since 2020, only 2 players in the NFL have recorded a pressure rate of 18% or higher in multiple seasons: Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett. This is a guy that wants to compete for championships. He's going to know that there's only 2 teams in the NFL that have made the playoffs in each of the last 5 years: the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He knows Baker and loves him. He knows what an elite pass rusher can do in Todd Bowles' defense because he has seen it. He saw what happened with JPP. He saw what happened with Shaq Barrett. The Bucs are a team that can pony up the picks to get him. Now, I'm not saying that multiple day 1 or day 2 picks aren't going to hurt. It will. It certainly affects their ability to build up the youth and the future of the franchise, but this is also a team that is hit on the middle and later rounds of the draft as well as anyone, and they aren't too far away from competing for a championship. The money is also going to be really difficult to navigate. Garrett has 2 years left on his deal and will be looking for north of $30 million a year when that deal expires. If the Bucs can work out an extension after the trade and spread that money out into void years, they can make it work. It is now even more crucial than before that the Bucs were able to keep Mike Greenberg in the building to help make the money work in these situations. So this is going to be a tricky deal for any team to pull off, but it's likely going to be one of those post-June 1st deals so that the Browns can save a little bit on the cap. they're going to have a ton of dead money either way, but it's a little easier to deal with a post-June 1st deal than one that's before June 1st. You're looking at around 4 to 5 draft picks in exchange for Garrett, maybe 1 pick back. And those picks are going to be over the course of the next 2, probably 3 drafts. Look, it takes brass cojones to pull off a deal like this. When the Bucs traded for JPP, they only gave up a 3rd and a 4th round pick, and in exchange, they got Jason Pierre-Paul and a 4th round pick. JPP was entering his age 29 season and was coming off a year where he had just 8.5 sacks, and he hadn't reached double-digit sacks in 4 seasons. With the Bucs, he had double-digit sacks his first year, followed by 8.5 and 9.5 the next 2 seasons. Garrett has had double-digit sacks in 7 consecutive years, averaging 13.6 sacks per season. He's been a first-team All-Pro in 4 of the last 5 years, and he's the defending Defensive Player of the Year. It is going to cost a king's ransom to land Myles Garrett, but it's a move that would pay dividends, and the Bucs absolutely need to be willing to pay the price to bring Myles Garrett to Tampa. Our first mock draft Monday, that is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards, rushing touchdowns, receiving yards, and for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, and whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly, Prize Picks has got you covered. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it is clear that people love this platform. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. Prize Picks, run your game. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. I remember last year's divisional round in Detroit being one of the loudest environments I have ever been in. My ears were ringing for a few days after that game. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And while I wasn't attending a playoff game this year, I did recently use Game Time Picks to find tickets for an upcoming concert. Browsing through the deals was simple, and I found great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. This super deal was especially impressive, offering the best value for the event, and the app's features like seat views before you buy and all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout make the experience smooth and reliable. Plus, on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guaranteed gave me peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Wrapping things up here on a mock draft Monday, and I got one for you. We're going to do a lot of these in a lot of different ways. I'll give my own mocks. I'll react to other people's mocks. Insiders can send in mocks, but this week I'm going to take a look at Pro Football Network's 7-round mock by Jacob Infante. In the first round, he has the Bucs taking edge rusher Nick Scourton from Texas A&M. In round 2, they go corner with Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. Round 3, Chris Paul Jr., the linebacker from Ole Miss. Round 4, Colorado State receiver Troy Horton. In round 5, defensive tackle Jamari Caldwell from Oregon. And then round 7, James Burnip, the punter from Alabama. Overall, not a bad draft. Jacob understood the most glaring needs for the Bucs, and he addressed them in the first 3 rounds. Edge, corner, linebacker. I absolutely love that. I see way too many mock drafts where people very obviously do not have a grasp on what the Bucs' biggest needs are, and they take positions where the Bucs are perfectly fine. Jacob understood the assignment. Now, other guys that could have gone at pick 19 that Jacob passed on were my guy, Benjamin Morrison, the Notre Dame corner, who went 2 picks later to the Steelers, and then Mike Green, the edge rusher for Marshall that dominated the headlines at the Senior Bowl and is coming off of a 17-sack season. Scourton is no slouch, though. He definitely faced much competition with A&M than Green saw with Marshall, but Scourton finished with 5 sacks last season and 17 in his collegiate career, including 10 in 2023. Maxwell Hairston, the corner from Kentucky, he is a Todd Bowles type corner. 6'1", he's got that size that the Bucs like and look for, and he had 6 interceptions in 3 years with the Wildcats, plus 2 forced fumbles and a sack last season. And then Chris Paul Jr., the linebacker from Ole Miss, 86 tackles, 3.5 sacks, and an interception, as well as a fumble recovery last season. He is lightning quick. He's pretty solid in coverage, which is something that the Bucs have sorely lacked from their linebackers not named Levante David over the last few years. This is a 3rd-round pick that can be a day 1 starter for the Bucs next to Levante David, should he decide to return to the team and continue his career. After those 3 picks, though, you're kind of looking for depth. We talk a lot about that. Looking for these high upside guys that are not going to be asked to start, but they can earn their way into that role throughout rookie minicamp and OTAs and training camp and preseason, and even through the first couple of weeks of the regular season. But Infante has the Bucs take one offensive player in this draft, and that was Colorado State receiver Troy Horton in the 4th round. I don't hate this move, but this also is not a move where you're making the assumption that he is going to come in to replace Chris Godwin. This would be more of a Sterling Shepard replacement kind of player. He's 6'3", 185, but he's coming off of a year where he played just 5 games after suffering a knee injury that caused him to have season-ending surgery. Before that, he was a 2-time All-Mountain West player, a 2-time first team All Mountain West, and he had back-to-back seasons of over 1,100 yards to go along with 8 touchdowns in each of those 2 seasons. Last year in 5 games, just 26 receptions for 353 yards and 1 touchdown. But this is an explosive player that could really solidify the depth at receiver behind Evans, McMillan, and then hopefully Godwin. Then you have depth along the defensive line in the 5th round with the selection of Caldwell before rounding it out with a punter. Now, I'm not sure that I love the punter pick, but I get it. It's the 7th round of a mock draft. The Bucs went through 3 punters last year. They're going to look for an answer at that position. And if they think they can nab an elite guy in the 7th round, then sure, go ahead and go for it. The Bucs have been great at undrafted free agency. They have been great at landing these late round guys. Go ahead and use the pick on a punter in the 7th round because it's the 7th round. You might end up with a player that has more snaps in the NFL his rookie season than any other player drafted in that round by taking a punter. So I'm not going to hate on that pick. I would probably be a little more critical of it if it was, say, the 5th round. But all in all, this was one of the better Buccaneers mocks that I've seen early on in this process. And we're going to see these mock drafts continue to evolve. You're going to get through the scouting combine and guys are going to start to get hyped up and shift around a little bit. You're going to get through free agency. That's going to change the draft needs. So early on in the process, I really like this mock from Jacob Infante. I think he nailed some of these picks. I think he gives the Bucs 3 starters with their first 3 picks. You know, I give this one an A. I think it's a really solid job. Next week, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my own mock draft with the stipulation of the Bucs traded for Myles Garrett. Here's what they can do with their remaining capital, which means I need to jump into trade machines and try to figure out what kind of deal the Bucs could realistically give in exchange for Myles Garrett. But we're going to have fun with the mock drafts this year in these situational ones. Trading for Garrett to create a situational mock draft. Forcing myself into a specific position with the first pick to see how the rest of the draft shakes out. You know, taking only defensive players. Things like that. You guys can send your stipulations to me if you want. You can drop them in the comments. Insiders, shoot me a text and let me know what kind of mock draft stipulations you want me to follow through with. But that is going to do it for this episode. Please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Make sure that you are following on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.